stream of wisdom. I swear nothing compares to riding on the wind of a thought with no trace of a fight. Ahead is only peace and light. There's no way to go and lay ahead. Better live now or else be dead. Hold your dreams close and don't look back. Live a life free of harm, no regret. Find a place that will welcome you into the clouds, unwinding into white. We will be. Carve a space that can hold you in all you are, with no assumption of what will be, of what we'll find, of what will make us what we
All right, y'all. One more time for Sarah Elizabeth Charles. No. One more time. Sarah Elizabeth Charles, y'all. So right now I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce you to the members of the ensemble, but we're going to take a moment and do that so you know who it is you're listening to. So we're going to, damn, Sarah Charles, y'all. She just wore us out. On the piano from St. Louis, Missouri. Now, I met Lawrence. Well, it's weird. We went to Berkeley together, but we never met there. It wasn't until it wasn't until we were about 4 or 5 years out of school that we actually met each other. And I called him for, we had like a 7-week run in Europe or something like that, and I called him to see whether or not he could make the dates. And he showed up for the rehearsal. And about 20 minutes into the rehearsal, I realized I was being shown my music. Lawrence has a few abilities, things that he's developed, that are, in my estimation, really uncanny, strange things that he's developed, beautiful things. One of the skill sets that he has, and something that he's worked on for a long time here, is that Lawrence has the ability to acculturate any vernacular music, any musical vernacular, into a creative improvise or jazz context, right? This is a guy that can take something that comes from traditional Korean music, something that comes from, maybe a rhythm like Kasasoro or Kasalaban from Senegal or Mali or Gambia, these sort of places. He can take all of these disparate cultural tenets of music, and he can throw all of those things into a jazz context, and he makes it work seamlessly, which is a very difficult thing to do. Now that's not talent, right? This is something that comes from thousands of hours of work and diligence, and it's the musical equivalent of being able to speak Japanese, speak Tigrinya, speak Russian, and no matter who you are speaking to, they understand everything that you're saying, and it makes the things that they say back to him make more sense. So he's sort of like a musical Rosetta Stone, if you will. Now, what's even doper about all of that is, a gift like that, something that he's developed, that would be a very dangerous tool in the wrong hands. But Lawrence really respects and loves all of the different cultures of music that he studies. So when you see that type of skill set belong to someone that has so much love and reverence for people, it obviously warms your heart. So a phenomenal talent, an even better friend, Mr. Lawrence Fields on piano. On the bass, from Windsor, Connecticut, by way of Laudis, Puerto Rico, by way of New London, Connecticut, is a guy that I've been making music with for 20 years. Now, Luquez and I met each other 20 years ago in Havana, Cuba. We were both about 14, 15 years old. And in order for me to get there, I had to go from New Orleans, Louisiana to New York, New York, to Narita, Tokyo, to Havana. Now, mind you, I was talking to Mr. Neville earlier, and he was telling me that there used to be a shuttle from New Orleans to Havana. That's how close it is, like a ferry. But I had to go all the way to Tokyo to get there, and because at that moment, it's, Americans couldn't go there. And so you had to put enough distance between you and the United States so they couldn't keep the scent, which is even deeper, kind of, right? Just get that scent off me. Like they say, the shallow water, get the dogs off me. And I made the mistake of eating a Japanese hot dog before my flight, and I got food poisoning. Now, here's what was really weird about it. When I got on the plane, I'm sick, right? This is gross, by the way, if you're eating, sorry. I was so sick, I'm not gonna get into it. It was really crazy. And I felt like I was dying. And if black people could turn blue, I would have been blue, right? Other than metaphorically blue with the blues and all that, no, actually blue. And what was weird about it was I was surrounded by all of these adult Japanese people that didn't care that I was dying. I was like, I'm fucking dying. And they was just like, well, he'll be all right, slavery and shit. They're strong, he's fine. So I finally get into Havana. I'm sorry, I know this was your introduction, but I'm entertaining right now. I finally get into Havana, and I'm sitting in the lobby of the Riviera Hotel, and I don't speak any Spanish. They're telling me they don't have a room for me, even though I have all of this information itinerary. And now, mind you, this is a long time ago, so you couldn't just pull up an iPhone and be like, there it is, at all. You had to actually have this stuff together. And so I'm sitting there, I think I'm dying. No one is helping me. And this guy comes up to me and he asks me if I'm okay. And I immediately, of course, I was shocked that he spoke English. I was like, yeah, no, I'm having difficulty. I'm feeling really sick. And he's like, no, it's okay. You're going to be all right. So he helped them get me in the room. I ended up getting in my room. I get settled in. And 10 minutes later, he brings up a chicken noodle soup in a Canada Dry for me. Now, I love you, man. Come on. Now, look, the reason that I tell this story is because, like Mr. Neville pointed out earlier, y'all used to hear stories about jazz musicians giving each other heroin, right? But you don't hear so many stories about us giving each other chicken noodle soup, right? And there's a lot more instances of us giving each other soup than heroin. I don't know. I've never seen heroin, right? But so we went to Berkeley together, became roommates, lived together, started our first record label together when we were 19 years old, ended up being on the cover of all these magazines, Billboard magazine, 2002, all this stuff. We were actually the first jazz group to be on the cover of Billboard magazine in 40 years, and we were on twice that year. To be able to share that much of your journey with somebody that has like the most warm, this is the most welcoming and warm person I've ever met in my entire experience. Now, in addition to all of that, Luquez is by far the leading exponent on his instrument for this generation of bass players. He leads the pack in the conceptual sound, he leads the pack in the straight ahead vernacular and also the Latin vernacular, which he's played with Eddie Palmieri's band and has tenure in that and is the architect of that sound now. So a phenomenal talent, a guy that I wouldn't be who I am as a person if it wasn't for his contribution in my life, a guy I love to death, love dearly, my brother, Mr. Luquez Curtis. One more time, y'all. Mr. Luquez Curtis on the bass, y'all. All right. All right, on the alto saxophone, all of 26 years old? 26 years old, huh? You're getting old, Honors. Braxton joined the band. How old were you when you joined the band? You were 21? You were 21, okay. All right, it's flying by, man. Yeah. You like, I know, I'm me. When Braxton did his, I have to tell this story, and this is unrelated to his prowess. I know. They don't like when I tell the stories, but I tell the stories because I fucking like them. Now, when Braxton first joined the band, we played a week at the Blue Note. We were just there last week. But this is years ago. After the gig was over, I used to think I was handsome till Braxton joined the band. So we do this gig. After the gig is over, this girl, she comes up to me. Let me talk to y'all. I feel y'all. So this girl, she comes up to me and she starts telling me, she's whispering to me about how sexy Braxton is. Isn't that cold-blooded? But it's weird because the things that she's whispering, they're very strange things, right? She's whispering, look at those nail beds. Look at the veins in his arms. Now mind you, I didn't, I don't know what women are or are not into, but I didn't know that nail beds and arm veins were sexy, right? And it was weird because she actually said it looked like we were both wearing eyeliner. She talked about how he was such a beautiful chocolate-complected man. And it was weird because she was whispering everything because she was like 90. And, I'm not trying to clown him. I'm being honest, right? I'm not ageist to anything. But she was an older lady. And so eventually Braxton came up and he talked with her and they developed a rapport and they talked for about 20 minutes. He walked her down, put her in a cab, gave her a big hug and kiss, and we never let him forget it. We teased him about it. But it says a lot about who he is as a person, right? Braxton, stop clapping for yourself. Did you give yourself a round of applause? All right, okay, all right. Now, Braxton changed my mind, man. I never, ever thought that I would ever work with a saxophonist again. I had resolved that was never going to happen after I left my uncle's band. I was like, that's it. Walter's gone. It's cool. He's doing his thing and everything, but I don't need a saxophone player. So we went out quintet with guitar as opposed to saxophone for years. And the first time that I heard Braxton open up, it was really a red letter day for me because I realized that, I had these moments with Corey, with Braxton, also with Elena, but I knew that there had to be a shift and a change. So I started to try and write some music that had some more changes in it so he wouldn't be bored. You don't even know any of that. I was like, Braxton's going to be bored with these chords. Let me move this around. And then he'd show up, and I thought I wrote some really badass chords, and he'd be like, these are boring. But when you hear him play, he doesn't have to overblow to captivate you. This is a person that has an incredible amount of refinement, but what he's communicating is felt without him having to force it, right? And so that's, sometimes you meet people and, you'll meet someone and they're like, I went to Harvard and I give dissertations and all of that type of stuff. And they're talking for 2 hours. Like, I'm talking a lot now, but fuck that. We talking about other people. But they're talking for 2 hours and you don't understand shit they said to you. And you can meet a wino and he's like, bruh, and you know everything he means, right? You get what I'm saying? So Braxton has that ability. It's more eloquent than that. But he has this ability to be able to communicate without shouting to you. And one of the things that I learned from him is that sometimes when you're communicating something, if I'm sitting with a group of people or a couple of people and I'm speaking to them and I'm talking to them like this, they're going to have a very specific reaction to that. But if I speak to them this way, then it forces them to listen to what I'm saying. And this is something that he developed, and that when he joined the band, we had to make an adjustment because his voice was like that. So I don't know that he's aware of it, but I'm grateful for him and love him to death. My little brother, y'all please go to Mr. Braxton Cook on the alto saxophone. He also just released a chart-topping record called Somewhere in Between, which features his singing and songwriting voice as well. You got to pick it up. It's on to iTunes. Y'all go and grab that. Now, last but never least, we have the bad boy of this music right now. Now, Corey hates when I tell this story. But like I said, I'm telling stories today. I met Corey at the Grammys. He was about 15 years old. He was playing with the Grammy Band. He's the only person to do the band 3 times. The Grammy Band is a band that they make up of all of the best young American talent to play for the nominees and award winners. I went in that year, 2006 or 7. One of my records had been nominated, so I went in to play with him as a special guest. I didn't realize that I was going to hear this kid tearing the drums up. He sounded so good. I'll never forget speaking to my manager about how good he sounded. And so after the gig was over, he comes up to me. He's like, Mr. Scott, which people that know me know I don't really like being called Scott. But he didn't know at that moment. He said, Mr. Scott, I love your music. I know all of your records. I know your songs. I know your songs. He says, I'm ready to come on the road. Put me in the band. So now, mind you, I started touring when I was about 13 years old. Lucas came out really, really young as well. So we knew exactly why you shouldn't have someone so young on the road. So I told him, I said, listen, I need you to give me 6 to 8 hours a day every day for the next 4 to 5 years, and when you're 19 to 20 years old, maybe you'll be good enough to play with us. He didn't back off from the work, which left a lasting impression on me because when I told him that, it was like a key had opened up. And he wasn't afraid to actually put the work that's required to do this at a high level into it. Now, I thought I was getting away. As I'm getting into my limo, he goes, Mr. Scott. I said, yes, Corey. Give me your phone number. So I gave him my cell phone number, which turned out to be the worst decision of my adult life. Now, mind you, I'm saying that's the worst decision of my adult life, but just to give you some context, I'm a divorced person, right? So this was really bad, right? This kid prank called me every day, multiple times a day. Wait a minute. Multiple times a day as my grandmother to threaten me about putting his ass in the band. All right? So I want y'all to hear a little bit of what I heard every night.
Christian Scott, Atunde Adjua, baby. This is Hattie Mae Walker Scott, Atunde Adjua. I'm calling you from Noonan, Georgia. Please return my phone calls, baby. I heard this young drummer the other day, baby, and I thought of you, so please call me back. I ain't heard it from you since 82, baby. If you don't call me back, I'm going to whoop your ass. Bye.
Now, I heard that every day for 5 years. All right? And at one point, I told him, I said, look, I don't know who this is. You need to chill out. Stop calling here. He had his friends calling me, his kids from, like, goons from his high school was calling me. He's like, this Christian. Like, who is this? And so I told him to stop calling, and he stopped, and it broke my little heart. Because you don't realize that, moments like that provide a considerable amount of levity in your day. It's hard to take yourself serious if somebody's going to do that, right? Now, Corey has grown into the leading exponent on his instrument for this generation of players. He leads a band called Butcher Brown, which is one of the baddest bands on the scene right now. They've put out 4 records in the last 2 years. There's nothing this person can't do on the instrument. What I appreciate most about him is it doesn't matter. We could play a gig. We could play in Seoul and then fly from there to play in Abu Dhabi and then have to spend a week in Dublin without a day off. I've seen this cat play with the flu, fever, hands bleeding, and it doesn't matter. He's still going to give you 200%. And it says more about what he thinks of you than anything else, that he's not going to let you leave here without his spirit. So y'all give it up for Mr. Corey Fonville on the drums. Corey Fonville, y'all. Eye the Hurricane? All right. We've been stretching out a little bit, but now we'll play some. We're going to play some straight ahead music. This one is by Herbie Hancock. It's called Eye of the Hurricane. we have one more for you guys before we head out. And this was a composition that's about really serious subject matter, actually. It's a song that's about us. It's a composition that's written through me conjecturing about what my grandfather's actual life was like and what led him to make some of the decisions that he made, right? Now, my granddad is a guy named Donald Harrison Sr., Big Chief Donald Harrison Sr., right? Thank you. Now, up to date, maybe this may change at some point, but he's the only man to be a chieftain of 4 different clans of black Indians in New Orleans, right? And thank you. Thank you. Now, my uncle has been chief for about 20 years, and I was just coordinated as chief this year. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I can help and why this station is important and what we need to do to sort of get past some of the things that plague us. Now, when I was a little boy, my grandfather used to do a very peculiar thing. He would come into our house, and he would take all of the food out of the house. And when I was really small, you know, obviously I was perplexed by this, but, you know, you're so small, you don't know what other people's home life is like, so you don't know if that's weird or not. And so it took me about 8 years to muster up enough courage to ask the chief why he was taking all of the food out of the house. And what I learned in that moment and in that day changed my life forever. Now, it didn't matter what it was. It could be a steak. It could be a Tic Tac. Had to go. If it was edible, it had to go. And so he told me that if I had the gall to ask him what he was doing with food that he paid for, you know, he's also a brother from New Orleans too, so you're going to keep it straight with you. That I was going to have to really figure it out. Now, mind you, this is a guy that, just to give a little bit of background about how he was, this is a guy that on July 4th of every year, he would take us, you know, to different places, different cities, towns in Louisiana, and he would make us work the fields from sun up to sundown so that we knew what we were doing on Independence Day. And so it's a very specific person, right? But he told me, he said, okay, you got the gall to ask me what's happening, and you're going to have to participate. So I don't know if you've ever brought your groceries home in one bag, but that's heavy. So he made me put all of the food in the house in one bag, a big canvas bag, and I dragged this bag, tried to carry it as best I could behind him. We walked to the corner of Desire and Galvez, which is a few blocks away from my house. And what I saw in that moment broke my heart and changed my life. I started to see the people from my neighborhood come out of their houses and line up. And he started to give the food away. Now, mind you, I saw 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, young boys that were younger than I was at the time that was responsible for feeding their families and their siblings. I saw elderly people that no one cared about anymore that were struggling to try and eat. I saw fathers and mothers that had families that were trying their best and enduring a lot, that were in limbo, and sometimes you could see shame. Obviously, when in a moment like that, there's a lot that happens to fracture one's psychological matrix in that space. And so, you know, I think a lot of times we forget, if it's not our reality, how expensive it is to be poor. Right? Now, he gave the food out, and then he went into, you know, I think they say bodega in the Northeast a little bit, right? The corner store, right? But anybody from New Orleans, he went into Wagner's meat, if you remember that, in the 9th Ward. And he filled the bag up and he walked into the 8th Ward. And then he did it again. And he filled the bag up and walked into the 7th Ward. And filled the bag up and walked into the Trimmy. And on and on. We walked all the way from the upper 9th Ward to the 17th Ward that day. And when I got home, I was confused. I asked him, I said, why? You know, I'm like 11 years old, so I'm thinking it's the mayor supposed to do that. See, I mean, I'm being real with y'all. Like, I thought it was like, why isn't the mayor doing that, right? So I said, Papa, why are you doing this? Shouldn't the mayor be doing that? And he told me 2 things, and I'll never forget them. I think about them every day. First thing that he told me is, when you see people enduring something hard, pain, hardship, they're going through something rough like that, He said that you saw it for a reason, right? Now, obviously, we live in an environment where it's a little different now in some ways because of social media. You can see something that you might not have the ability to really be able to touch in one moment. But at the time, that was his purview. The second thing that he told me is that you don't build tribes. And remember, this is a guy that led 4 clans in New Orleans. You don't build tribes, you don't build communities, you don't build cities or municipalities, states or provinces. I'm just remembering how he said it. I hope y'all get that. Right, now mind you, when I say that, I'll give a couple examples, right? When I say we don't fully agree, you might be Black Lives Matter, but you don't care about what's going on in the gay community. And you might be gay and you don't give a shit about what happens in immigration. Right? And you may be an immigrant and you don't care about what's going on with people that are trying to figure out the best way to navigate the gender qualification and how that is going right now in this moment, right? Now, if you look at the tenets of all of these cultures and what they're fighting for, most of them are pretty similar. But because we don't fully agree, we disagree. Right? Now mind you, there's over 300 million of us. We will never fully agree about anything. It's too many of us. So there has to be a way to reach a consensus without fully agreeing, right? Now, we play this song for you as a means of closing the set out and leaving you with this because what you are going to hear is really, really sacred to me. You are going to hear a rhythm that comes from one of the most sacred moments in Black Indian, or if you decide to look at it as Afro-Native American culture. In New Orleans, we have a very specific thing in terms of the musical side of it. But when you go to other parts of the southeast Louisiana and other parts of the South that also have Black Indians, they have different rhythms and different things, right? When I was a small boy, my grandfather, he would bring us to the powwows in New Mexico. He'd bring us to powwows in northern Louisiana. We would go and we would share. I mean, I remember meeting Apache kids and meeting Sioux children and sharing with them and doing all these things. The rhythm that you're going to hear, though, is one of the rhythms that happens a lot in northern Louisiana. This is the rhythm that they play at the Gathering of Nations when the braves meet each other. So in part of my culture, this is one of the most specific and sacred moments that we actually have. Now, I'm playing this rhythm for you as a means of being my most open and vulnerable with you. But this is me reaching out and saying, if I can be this open and vulnerable, then it is an attempt to get you to also be that open and vulnerable with me, right? Obviously, you guys didn't come here for a lecture. I didn't come here to lecture you. I see we got people on their phones and everything. Maybe this part of the conversation might be a little bit boring. But, no, that's okay. But I'm saying what I'm saying because I don't have any kids yet, but I don't want to gift my kids a reality where people are hating each other over topical things, right? Now, that might not be important to you. I'm telling you it's important to me, right? And I'm hoping that if you have children, you walk out of here, maybe you don't have any, maybe you practice a lot. But the point is, our generation, and when I say that, I mean the 5-year-old that's in this building. I know Chris was saying he has a son. His son is 6, I think. I'm also speaking to the 90-year-old lady that thought Braxton was sexy. All of those people are included in our generation. You're alive now, you're in this generation. We have a profound opportunity in front of us. We could actually be the first generation that eradicates all of this terrible stuff that's based on topical things, right? Now, we're going to play this song for you in the hopes that when we finish, when you walk outside of this building, that you not only are open to me, but also are open and vulnerable and expressive and communicative to each other as well, right? So, I didn't come to preach to y'all. I just want to spread some love and hope that y'all feel that, right? So we're going to close with this one. We appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for coming out. This one is called The Last Chieftain.